Once upon a time, in a quiet town tucked deep in South Asia, there lived a young man named Armin who knew from a very early age that his destiny lay far beyond the rice fields, broken roads, and worn-out walls that surrounded his life. He didn't have a fancy education, his family had no political connections, and his only inheritance was a small tin-roofed house and an aging mother who always whispered, "One day, you'll do something great." Those words stayed with him like a shadow, not as comfort, but as a calling. Armin was not a dreamer who waited. He was a dreamer who moved. At 19, with a suitcase of second-hand clothes, $300 borrowed dollars in his pocket, and a heart full of fire, he stepped into the unknown, the United States of America. He didn't land in New York or Los Angeles, but in a tiny shared apartment in a rough neighborhood in Detroit, where the snow outside matched the coldness of a city that had no time to care who you were. His first job was washing dishes in a diner from midnight to 8 a.m., then cleaning motel rooms by day, sleeping 2 hours in between, and saving every cent while others spent. For 2 years, he spoke broken English, wore the same shoes until they had holes, and never once bought a coffee or went to a movie. Every dollar he saved was not for comfort, it was a brick in the foundation of a future no one else could see. He studied people, observed how business worked, noticed that the motel he cleaned never advertised online, and the owner barely knew how to use email. That's when a light turned on. Armin offered to build them a website. For free. It took him a week using public library computers and YouTube tutorials. But when he finished, bookings increased by 19% the first month. The owner was shocked. Soon, other small businesses around town heard about the kid who makes websites. And suddenly, Armin was charging $100, then $500, then $2,000 per project. He created a logo on a free design tool and called his venture Sky Builder Digital. He had no team, no office, and still lived in a shared apartment with 3 other immigrants, but he had his first real client list. He'd go to work with a tie on a borrowed laptop, pitching to local restaurants, barbershops, plumbers, anyone with a phone number. Many laughed in his face. Some didn't even open their doors. But the few who did were blown away by how this immigrant with no degree understood what they needed. Visibility, growth, modern tools. Within 18 months, Armin had built 47 websites, hired his first freelancer from Pakistan, and had his first month of $10,000 profit. He was still riding the bus. Still eating dollar menu food. But now he was reinvesting every penny. Buying software, learning marketing, and starting to run Facebook ads not just for himself, but for others. He went from websites to full digital strategy. He mastered the art of building brands online. And in 4 years, Armin's agency crossed $1 million in revenue. He bought his first used car, then moved into a 2-bedroom apartment, bringing his mother to the U.S. and fulfilling the promise he had made at 13. But this was just the beginning. He had a secret. Every time he built a website for a business, he studied their industry. He learned what made them money. And he realized the margins were better if he didn't just work for businesses. He could own them. That's when he started silently buying small cash-generating websites, affiliate blogs, e-commerce dropshipping stores, Amazon product review pages. He bought one for $3,000 that made $500 a month, and another for $8,000 that he flipped for $18,000 6 months later. He was becoming not just a builder, but a buyer and a scaler. He watched Warren Buffett videos late into the night, not for stock tips, but to learn how empires were built by seeing value others ignored. At 27, Armin owned stakes in 9 online businesses and started a course to teach other immigrants how to start from zero. It sold out in 2 weeks. He didn't sell dreams, he sold systems. Real, boring, powerful systems that took people from survival to strategy. By 30, he was on the Forbes Under 30 list, not because he went viral, but because he helped over 2,000 others do the same. His name was being whispered in investor circles, but he stayed grounded. No Rolex. No Lamborghini. He wore a $50 watch his mother gifted him. He said no to every flashy podcast invite, every influencer brand deal. He focused on building. Quietly, deeply, with relentless clarity. At 33, he started investing in commercial real estate. Not just buying, but redeveloping motels into co-working spaces and tech hubs for underrepresented founders. He called it the Backpack to Boardroom Project. Journalists finally took notice. Who is this immigrant millionaire funding startups in rural towns? Headlines read, Arman finally spoke publicly. He shared his story not with pride, but with precision. He said, I had no degree, no connections. Just obsession. Just hunger. Just discipline. His speech at a Stanford Entrepreneurship Summit went viral. People cried. Not because of what he had, but because of what he overcame. From hand-washing toilets to owning commercial real estate portfolios. From broken English to mentoring Harvard grads. From silence to legacy. Today, at 39, Arman's net worth stands over $100 million. But more than that, he employs over 700 people worldwide, across 4 continents. He started scholarships in 9 countries. He owns a venture capital fund that only backs founders with no Ivy League degree. His success didn't come from luck. It came from looking at every no as a future yes, from turning insults into fuel, from building one honest business at a time. He still walks into his office with a lunchbox, says thank you to every janitor, and sends 10 cold emails every week, just to remember where he started. Arman is not a myth. He's not a unicorn. He's the story of what happens when someone walks into a country with nothing but willpower, and never stops walking. And that's how an immigrant became a millionaire in the USA. No degree, no connections, just unshakable belief and undeniable work. And just when it seemed like life had already handed him every possible reason to give up, he doubled down on his commitment, using the very walls that once trapped him as stepping stones to rise above. Every morning before the sun broke through the clouds, he was already on his feet, delivering flyers, cleaning restaurants, and making coffee for people who would never bother to learn his name. But in those small, unseen moments, something unbreakable was forming inside him. A fierce, humble resolve that didn't need applause to grow stronger. He watched, he learned, and most importantly, he listened. Every word exchanged between business owners and customers, every failed conversation in broken English, every bus ride that gave him a glimpse of another world beyond poverty, it all fueled a vision that quietly began to form in his heart. He wasn't aiming to become a millionaire at first. He was aiming to be free, to be respected, and to build something his mother would one day be proud of. He started with a hot dog stand, nothing glamorous, just a small cart borrowed with the last of his savings and a permit he barely understood how to file. For months, he worked in the freezing cold, under the blistering sun, with calloused hands and an accent most ignored, but every customer he served became part of the dream. He memorized the flavors that sold, tracked which corners had the most traffic, adjusted his prices by watching the habits of passers-by. That cart wasn't just a job, it was a classroom. He learned how people think, what makes them return, what makes them trust. His menu changed, his branding improved, and little by little, he saved enough to buy a second cart, then a third. Soon, what started as a survival tactic was growing into a brand. Locals knew his face. Tourists remembered his charm. But he never forgot the nights he went to bed hungry, so he poured every dollar not into luxury, but into learning and scaling. He took online courses late at night after 14-hour shifts. He studied marketing, supply chains, and how franchising worked. Without a degree or a mentor, he became a student of the streets, and that education was more valuable than any classroom he could have dreamed of affording. And then came the moment no one saw coming. The opportunity that would turn a struggling immigrant into a rising entrepreneur. A local businesswoman who had eaten at his cart multiple times offered him a chance to cater a small event. Nervous but determined, he said yes, spending every saved dollar on better ingredients and equipment he didn't even know how to use. That one event opened doors. Word spread. He began catering more events, collaborating with food bloggers, and soon, he had enough traction to pitch investors on a small fast-casual restaurant concept based on his signature dishes. He walked into those rooms with no suit, no polished accent, no pedigree, but his results and resilience spoke louder than any resume ever could. One investor took a chance. The first restaurant opened in a tiny strip mall, and again, he did everything. Cooking, cleaning, serving, smiling. But the place had heart. Customers felt it. The lines grew longer, reviews grew louder, and within a year, he opened his second location. By the 5th year, he had 9 locations across the state. Interviews started coming in. Magazines wanted to know who this man was who came from nothing and built an empire without ever compromising his values. When asked what made him different, he never talked about luck. He talked about waking up before dawn when his feet still hurt from the day before. He talked about saying thank you with every plate. He talked about calling his mother every night just to remind her they were going to be okay. He didn't just build a business. He built a legacy that proved you don't need connections, privilege, or even a formal education to create something extraordinary. You need relentless faith, uncomfortable discipline, and the kind of patience that outlasts disappointment. Today, he sits not just as a millionaire but as a symbol. For every immigrant who ever felt invisible, for every dreamer who was told no because of how they looked, spoke, or where they came from. His story isn't just about money. It's about transformation. About a man who rewrote his destiny with bare hands and a full heart. And now, he teaches others to do the same, offering mentorship, funding startups led by underrepresented voices, and reminding every young dreamer that the American dream is still alive, not because it's handed to you, but because it can be earned. One step, one risk, one act of courage at a time.